welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man currently in the longest-standing conflict with a woman because he believes she should only speak when spoken to. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who refuses to let Siri tell him anything. That is a real take right there, because for as much time as I've spent with you and as many years as we've been together, I recently discovered that Garrett refuses to speak to Siri because I used it on his truck, and he was like, that's the first time Siri's ever been used. I'm like, what, you don't use Siri? He's like, nope. He's like, she started talking to me one day, and I did not talk to her. And that was the end of Siri. That was it.
He killed Siri.
I don't like the Siri prompts while I'm driving. Like, don't just randomly start talking to me.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a computer. It's like you can't be like, hold on a second. It just keeps talking. It's like, okay, we're turning you off immediately.
We're getting a lot of insight into your marriage, which is good because we are joined today. This is the episode. Yeah, obviously, I'm just messing around. This is the episode I've personally been waiting for. I'm more excited about this episode.
This has been a long time coming.
Yeah, than any episode we've ever done before, because we have my favorite person in the whole world, my wife, sat next to me, which is a fun surprise to actually be able to do this. And also,
cue British sound.
Plug for our YouTube channel. If you'd like to see us and not just hear us, feel free to join us on YouTube.
Yeah, very good. Look at you, man. You're getting more and more commercial by the day. You know, it's a guy who's never even go on social media. And obviously my little sister and Garrett's wife, Lindsay. You will hear me call her Sprinkles. Whoop, whoop. There she is. Wow, is that's the sound effect you want for
yours? I don't know.
She does her own sound effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even need a soundboard.
Yeah,
it's just all built in.
So I think everybody out there is beginning to realize the balance in your relationship and mine. As
Garrett,
my wife,
this is called smiling. We do this when we're happy.
You cover it for both of us.
Yeah.
There you go.
Amazing.
Meanwhile, do you want to say hi, babe?
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. My wife is from the UK in it, so it's a lot of fun. You will hear her accent, and hopefully, I think everybody will enjoy it. So we'll just let them wait to hear more of it. So
Absolutely.
This is so fun. It's a podcast double date.
It is, yeah.
This is also the launch and the closeout of the Impossible Wife podcast.
Ooh, okay. Lindsay was just sitting on that one.
Ready.
She had like all sorts of title suggestions. That one actually made me laugh out loud. Welcome to the Impossible Wife podcast.
See,
the one
the launch and the close.
This is an exclusive limited edition series. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Now so a couple little notes. Obviously, Lindsay has little sister energy, so like it's like 110. She's actually listed that one of her top 5 favorite things to do is roast me. And you're definitely.
That's what I was hoping this would be. This would be a 3-on-1. Well, take Nick down.
Yeah, it's not, because my wife. You're not going to join in on that, right, babe?
I think she's a innocent bystander that's also amused.
She's 100% amused. Yeah,
she doesn't shut it down, which would technically make her an accomplice.
Yeah,
I speak truth when needed.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, and so you're seeing the balance in my relationship as well. So here's my wife, who's wonderful, wise, beautiful, fun.
So why do we have the ladies on
as much
today?
as I do? Yeah. Well, yeah. So the reason we wanted to have this, we were talking about this beforehand. Mm-hmm. This whole series has really been, if we could say like, here's what you need to know in one sentence from this series, it'd be like, marriage can be the greatest relationship you'll ever have on earth. Like, the possible of marriage is that it can be amazing. We both love our relationships with our wives. Like, our marriage is the greatest joy in my life. It's the best it's ever been. It keeps getting better. I love being with my wife. I love literally everything about our relationship. I know that's not always the case. I know you all have that same exact thing. And it's one thing for Garrett and I to come on here and be like, yeah, our relationships are great. But, like, why not hear from our wives?
We've been talking about that for the last 2 episodes. A few weeks ago before we started this series, you and I were just talking how, this podcast is so much about helping men have a better mindset, understanding the part that they have to play, the role that they play in advancing the kingdom. And one of the things you and I were discussing was just how sad it is for us, or disappointing it is for us, when we see men that they feel like their marriage is a burden. Yeah, and that's the opposite of really what your marriage is supposed to be. Proverbs 31, I was just talking with one of my friends about this. I think one of the coolest things in Proverbs 31, it's in multiple scriptures. It's in verse 26 and 27, but it's also in a few other verses, that it really just puts the wife in a role of not just the wife is an advisor, is a partner to a man in his business. And so in the same way, a marriage doesn't have to be a burden. Your wife and your partner in your marriage should be something that makes everything in your life better. So for the last couple episodes, you and I have talked about our marriages, but we're gonna have the real show today and have the
Exactly.
ladies on so they can give their perspective.
And we will say they have not been coerced into anything that's going to be said.
Lindsay asked me multiple times, she's like, "Is there anything you want me to?" I'm like, "No, you do. I just want you to answer the questions."
We had the same conversation. Okay, well, for those that don't, I mean, I'm hoping that people have listened to every episode, but I know that's not the case.
For sure.
For those that they're like, hey, I haven't listened long, or maybe they just don't know, well, give us the information on your marriage. Like, how long y'all been married?
Lindsay and I met July 19, 2015.
Wow.
Right, well, that was our first date. I coerced her for weeks prior to that via Instagram DMs to go on a date with me.
But he found me on Tinder.
Oh, dang.
Oh,
I did.
Shout out to
most
Tinder.
people.
Shout
Most people
out.
are shocked by that. But you find what you're looking for, and I found what I was looking for on Tinder, which was Lindsay. But she didn't even respond to me on Tinder. I DM'd her on Instagram, and we
The
started a
most
conversation.
millennial love story he'll ever
Well,
get
that
in
was
his
like
life.
Navy SEAL. She didn't respond to me, so I tracked her down.
On her Instagram, slid in the DMs.
Yeah, you certainly did have to restrain myself in that way because I could if I wanted to, but that's probably not a good foundation. For
I hope you
dating
led with that.
relationship.
If I wanted to, I could be on your
I will
doorstep.
hunt you down and find you.
By the way,
I have a
you're hot.
specific set of skills.
Oh my gosh.
Had to use other skills, not the ones the military gave me for my dating life. But anyways, our first date, July 19th, 2015, and then I deployed shortly thereafter in September. Ended my time in the military 2016. Proposed. I'm giving the short story. Proposed early 2016. We got married September 16th, 2016, and we moved back to Texas, got married. And so that's the start. So Lindsay and I have been together since 2015, but got married in 2016. Anything you want to add? You're usually when we go
I'm
on
just listening to you tell the story.
when we go on dates, people ask me questions. I just look at you and you start talking, which is like one of my favorite things that you do.
Yeah, I'm also Garrett's hired smile and words.
And
so.
number one fan club, as you
And
have the
and
pin.
yes,
She's
I
wearing
am
her
wearing
badge.
my button. It says that I am the president of the Garrett Unkelbach
Didn't
fan
y'all
club.
make that pin?
We
for
did.
it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You did.
Yeah, Rand keeps her well
There should be no
stocked
question
With-
as
yeah.
to who is the president
with
here.
customized Garrett Unkelbach love merch. That's like Rand's job as your friend is to provide you with that. She's got socks as well.
You know, I actually was going to say it feels wild to be sitting here talking about marriage, just because we've only been married 8 years now, and it just still feels like we're learning every day about each other. But like we were all discussing earlier, there's people that have been married a really, really long time and they don't even like each other. So,
Right.
this is just to highlight how amazing marriage can be.
Yeah, and y'all are above average, so congratulations. Average marriage lasts between 7 and 8 years. You're over 8 years.
We did
so,
it.
Yeah, you've done it. Could put that one up on your LinkedIn profile. So for us, we have like the Christian love story as you dream it. Like we met in Bible college back in 2003, and we were friends for the whole year. And because I was really dedicating the year to God, and then I felt like at the end of the year, like we hung out so much, and there was lots of things during the year that were highlighted to me about Ryan. Like I was like, man, I hang out with her every day, and I still look forward to seeing her. Like we get along great. It was just really easy to be together, and it was always fun, and we complimented. And I never met anyone like Ryan, and I was very aware of that. But honestly, I'm not like this may sound super weird or spiritual, but I really felt like I had something blocking me from seeing how pretty Ryan was, because I remember one day near the end of the Bible college year, we were hanging out, and I looked at you, and it was like I saw you for the first time, and I was like, what am I doing? So then I was like, oh man, I like this. I like her. And so then I asked you out, and we dated, got engaged in April of 2005. We got married. So it's been almost 20 years and 3 kids now. And what, you want to add anything, babe? Because I don't want to tell the whole. I talk all the time on here.
Specifically about our marriage?
We're 20 years, 3 kids. Is there anything else people need to know before we kick into all the good stuff?
I think
I would, Rand, give your, Nick just said, it took him a minute to see you, but I'd love to hear the other side of that story.
Oh gosh. So when I met Nick,
what did you think of Nick?
Okay.
And what was early
Not
Nick
necessarily
impression?
helpful for anybody.
early Nick, he was very confident. He came into the Bible college like he was on a dating show.
Okay.
And I was like, who is this
He's
guy?
like, who wants their MRS degree?
No, I don't want to waste people's time with the explanation, but carry on. I'll take it.
Yep. So we were just friends, and you were living your best life of not hiding anything about who you were, farting and all sorts in front of me. So it was no surprise what I got, which is what I wanted.
Yeah.
When we started dating.
Saw the real, none of this Tinder stuff.
Exactly.
Oh no, you think Garrett wasn't hot in right?
I'm sure.
Day one, we had a 12-hour first date at Disneyland. Day two, we're sitting on the beach in San Diego. He shows me like the seal base and like all these cool things down in Coronado. And then we're sitting there having pizza on the beach, and he's like, he told me he loved me on our second date. We've known each other for 48 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And then day three, he's like, I told my dad, I know you're going to be my wife.
Well, solid. That's wow, I
So,
didn't realize it
you
was
know,
that
speedy.
fast.
Full send.
Garrett's,
You know.
Clearly, I love how Garrett sums up as like, I knew pretty early. I knew before Lindsay. Well, not that much earlier because you told her on the third date. So, this is the first time I've heard that. That's
you didn't know that?
No, I
Yeah.
didn't know that. That's good to know. Garrett keeps these parts
It's exciting.
hidden. Yeah, it is exciting. All right, so the reason we wanted to let y'all know where we're at, like we've both been married now for an above average period of time. For Rena and I coming up on 20 years, both have kids. We got multiple businesses. We got lots of different things. We're heavily involved in our church and ministry, what we do in the impossible life. And it's not like, oh, that's what Garrett and I do. Like we do these things together because nothing that any of us do. I mean, you ladies are leaders. You help in women's ministry at our church, and there's lots of women that you're involved with.
And the children's ministry.
Yep. Shout out to LC Kids. Come serve with us.
Hey.
But the point being, like, I wanted to let people know where we're at so they can kind of understand and get a little bit of an idea of just what, our lives are very much like a lot of other people's. They're busy, they're full of activity. There's lots of things that could distract us, lots of things that could compete for priorities. And so I wanted to kind of get that established. But I want to go back to the beginning because what we're going to talk about in this podcast, we're going to get very tactical about conflict resolution. We're going to talk about communication. We're going to talk about the musts of marriage. We're going to have what we think the roles of a wife. We're going to have the wives share what they think the role
but
is.
that's the most important part. That's why y'all are here.
Exactly, to hear from you.
Yeah, the audience wants to hear from y'all. They get to hear from me and Nick all the time. So.
Exactly. Okay, so ladies, and y'all can go, whoever wants to go first. But like, what were your thoughts? Let's go back to all the way back to when you were getting married. What were your thoughts coming into marriage as far as what was important to you when you were first like going, okay, I think I'm going to get married? What really mattered?
You want to take it? You want me to go?
You go.
Okay. Well, I would say that I was still new in my walk with the Lord, but I knew that I wanted someone who would lead our family. I knew that was really important to me. I was raised in a Christian house. I was raised with a mom who stayed home with us, and I wanted that dynamic eventually. And I wanted someone who also wanted to have that family dynamic. So that was something we aligned on. I knew I wanted someone who loved America. And grass-fed beef.
Check and check.
I remember her.
Is that real?
No.
Oh, I was like,
No, I mean like Jesus, yeah. And then
right.
America. I mean, both of those things are very
For the
important to us.
longest
So.
time, like her social media bio said, thick American accent.
It still does.
that sums you up. Babe, I'm guessing yours is a little different than that.
So what I wanted was a lifelong commitment of friendship and love. And I had a great example of that in my parents.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, again, like Lindsay, I grew up where my parents prioritized my mum being at home with us. So I wanted to do that once we had children. And it was just sharing life together, but putting God at the center.
Yeah. And we met in Bible college. So that kind of, we had that firmly established. I remember going out with her dad. Dude, you talk about getting grilled. Her dad's like an OG minister. He's like planted churches all over the country.
I can't imagine.
All over the world.
Now having met Rian's dad and him meeting.
To be a fly on the wall
And
would
him
have
meeting
just
young
been.
Nick.
Look, man, I don't even want to go down that route.
He just said, wow, he talks fast.
that was his
He
take.
talks really fast.
Yeah.
I think also as a woman, you want that security. And I always felt with Garrett that I would be protected in life. Like that I would stand at his side and be protected.
Yeah.
And I didn't fully understand. I don't think like you fully understand what you're looking for at that age as well. I mean, I was young 20s.
Yeah.
And now that I've gotten older, I'm like, okay, yeah, I see why I wanted those things in Garrett.
Yeah, see, we were 23 as well, and I didn't realize all of us because your mom stayed home with y'all, and my mom stayed home with us. We all had that. So, like for mentors, were your parents? Would you say they were like marriage role models in the sense that you saw lots of things you liked or disliked?
Of course, my parents are best friends, and Garrett's my best friend. I love him deeply, and again, I knew how important it was to stay home with my kids. That was something I always wanted. So
yeah, and it's so, to me, that's so key that you have somebody that you can look at, because I suppose in some ways we're all very spoiled. Like all our parents are still married. they're still like happily married at that with God at the center.
Still like each other.
Yeah, they still like each other, and that's like such a rare blessing. And that's one of the things we highlighted in the first part of the series was just that it's tough for people if they don't have a good marriage like role model, because it's like, well, if all you've known is dysfunction, there's dysfunction that you've learned that you're not even aware of. And so it's I didn't even know the answer to that question before I asked it, but it's that's a blessing for us.
So just going on from there, you have your thoughts going into marriage, but then you go into marriage, and it's everyone's marriage is different than their parents. You learn from your parents as good or bad as your parents' marriage was, what you can learn from them. Then you go on into your own marriage, and you got to learn some lessons. So, babe, why don't you just go first again? What was some of your biggest lessons in marriage?
Biggest lessons. I mean, there's so many. I think you learn how selfish you are when you first get married, because, you've always been the center of your own world. And then you get married and you're like, oh, wow, like I have to share this time and be with you and be intentional. And then you have kids and the door completely blows off your selfishness. So it's like you just kick the door in all the way. So there's that. And then also I've just learned over time how to serve you correctly.
What does that mean?
What does it mean to serve you?
Yeah. You might be helping some people in their thought process. You might be confusing some people in their thought process with that. What does that mean?
I would say, okay, so one of my life scriptures is Proverbs 12:4. An excellent wife is the crown of her husband. So I want to crown Garrett in the way that like he can be the best version of himself. He has a high calling in his life, and I recognize that, and I never want to hold him back. So I say, one of the lessons I've learned is, we put all of our eggs into Garrett's basket, like whatever I can do to support him, help him, doing dishes all the time. I do all the laundry. I do take care of our children. And I don't say that to like complain about. I love, it gives me joy to be able to serve my family and to serve you so that you can go, conquer the mountain.
Yeah. Y'all have talked about that. Like that's not just, Garrett's just been like, well, I'm not going to do it. You guys have a design of understanding that you have a vision and a mission for your life.
I've talked about it on here before, but why don't you just say it in your own words, babe? Some of the conversation we've had on divided responsibility versus shared responsibility.
Well, I think when you're divided, it's like, here's my role and here's your role. We're not trying to like blend the two. I'm very much the caretaker of children. I'm the caretaker of our house. This is like my business, right? Like I take care of this 110%.
And it is a business for sure.
100%. You work. I think I've worked more now as a stay-at-home mom than I've ever worked in my whole life.
Yep.
Nonstop, around the clock.
Yep.
But people, when they share, and this is just what we've observed in people. I mean, you have to do what's right for your family, right? Like everybody has their own dynamic that works. No
sorries, babe. People want to hear from you, so just
okay. Well, this is what works for us. That's what I'm trying to say. I think everybody has ways that work. Anyway, when people have this like shared responsibility in the same things, then you start keeping score with each other. And then there's this like, oh no, I did the trash today, you do it tomorrow. Where it's like anything that's in the house is mine.
Right.
I can do every single dish, like I take out the trash. Like and I'm not keeping score on like, oh, well, you did it yesterday, so I'm going to do it today. And I'm just going to wait forever and then put it off. So it's serving you so that you can go do all that you want to do. And I think you have a high call, so I'm excited to watch that happen. And then I get the joy of taking care of our children
And you guys are so intentional. Just speaking as somebody who's an outsider to your relationship, because some people might be like, oh, you take out the trash. I could see that natural filter might be like, oh, but here what you said was you have a high call in your life, which means it's not just like, oh, I'm just Garrett's like fanboy, and whatever he wants to do, I just ride along with it. You understand that Garrett's got a clear calling on his life from God. So like your vision for your family, you guys are very clear about what you want with your family. Garrett's spoken about it at length. That's not just Garrett's idea. Like you guys have that together. So when you have an understanding of what the vision is and the mission, there's a joy in what you're doing, because it's not like I'm doing this because they wouldn't do it. It's like, no, this is my role to play in how we advance God's kingdom and progress and fulfill the mission that he's given us as a couple to bring forward what only we could do together, because he couldn't do it on his own, 100%.
I think there's, and we're jumping into the next question a little bit, which is fine. And we'll come back to Reen in just a second. But while you're still on this, babe,
in the hot seat.
Oh, yeah. Hey, you're going to be there all day.
I think there's, and again, like you said, people do it different ways. This is one way of doing it. It's not everyone's way of doing it. But for you, what motivates you or inspires you, encourages you to serve in the way that you do?
That's a good question. I would say just seeing the lives that have been changed through, through God, obviously, but through like our actions that we've taken as a couple. The sacrifices Saturday mornings are for Mighty Man, right? I wouldn't trade that time for anything. Garrett is up early. I mean, I'm on my own with the kids. We don't have like a Saturday together, right? Even on the weekends on church, where you go and serve pastor, and then I'm taking our kids by myself to church. So I think a lot of people see like the fruit and they want that in their life, but they don't want to pay the price as well.
Yeah, very good.
Because it's a life of service.
Yeah, that's so good. Ree, so same question to you. It's like, what have been some of your biggest lessons in marriage?
So for me, that life is full of seasons. And so sometimes you may be the stronger one lifting me up. Sometimes I'm the stronger one helping to hold you up. Also love you how you need to be loved, and to just be secure in my relationship with God, and to not have an expectation of what you should or need to bring, but to allow room for you to grow and learn and to make mistakes, and trust God in the process of it all, that as you focus on him, he will create in you the husband that I need.
And you were kind of referencing, I didn't really cover this in our quick update of where our marriage is at. I mean, there was a long period where I wasn't serving God, and I was not the man that you need me to be. I was selfish, I was depressed, I was alcohol dependent, and you stuck with me, like literally the entire time. So a lot of that, I'm guessing, well, you know, unless you're trying to tell me something right now.
I want to jump in on this, Reen, because I think this is one of the most. I love who you are as a wife, and I think so many women can learn from the way that you've loved and supported Nick. You know that no one's perfect, but Nick went through his season where he wasn't perfect, and I've just loved hearing some of your stories of continuing. You talked about going on your prayer walks and things like that. So you just tell some of that story and talk about where that came from for you, what that was like, because I think there's many women who might be listening to this who have either been down that road or where you were on that road, where their husband wasn't the man that that at one point Nick wasn't who you knew he could be. Today he is. And so encourage some women who might be in that process.
And vice versa. There might be men that are listening that their wives are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, please, baby, you bring them out here.
So as we've already covered, we got married, you were passionate about God, and then life happened and you became tainted in that. So what I held on to was one, that God was a good God, a faithful God, and he had ordained our marriage. So I stood on the covenant and the vows, and truly believed and understood at a deep level that I married you for better and for worse. And with that, there's an understanding of not every season is better for better, as amazing as our marriage is. But that has the opportunity for worse. Yeah. And so there would absolutely years where I didn't understand how God was going to work through this, but I knew he would, because God's faithful. And so when I didn't know what to do, I just trusted in God. And so, for example, after we had our third child, COVID, we were displaced because of a house flood. There were a lot of external pressures on us, and you were not in a good place. And so all I could do was just throw myself more into God, because I knew he was faithful. And it was a spiritual warfare, because I knew there was a calling on your life. So I would go out and just take Elijah, because you were not in a place to care for him or want to necessarily care for him. And so I would just put him in the baby carrier and go for an hour walk and play worship music and just pray to God. And I also had wise counsel. There were a couple of ladies that I knew us both, that would be able to encourage me in our marriage and not pull you down. Yeah. But they knew who you were deep down. So
I think that's huge, Ryan. The other ladies who were in your life, because whether it's your husband or your wife, if you're in that position where you've got a spouse that you're trying to pull them along, you can, if you're looking for it, you can go and find people to discourage you, and that discouragement's going to feel good in a moment where they're like, you're right, your spouse is a knucklehead, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. That's a discouragement for your life that's going to feel good in the moment, but you were wise to choose people who would speak life into Nick and into your marriage.
And you never badmouth me. That was one thing that we said in our marriage, that we would never badmouth each other. And Rian, man, I've watched Rian go through 56 hours of labor and still not give in, and that's not an exaggeration. Actual 56 hours. And so you are incredibly strong-willed, and you walk that out. Like, you talk about endurance.
On just observing other people before marriage, ladies talking about their husbands in such a negative way. And I would look and think, but you married them. Yeah. They're your best friend. And if you are getting together and just complaining and moaning and encouraging each other in that, how's that going to set your marriage up for success? So before we were even married, I made the decision within myself to never badmouth you. That's not to say that I wouldn't seek wise counsel when we were going through seasons of difficulty, but I would never just badmouth you.
It's protection, right? It's protection. You protect him because everybody talks bad. I mean, the world will talk bad to him, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's even, our job as women is to encourage and to be the peacekeepers of our households, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, even just wearing this button, right? Like, it's silly, sure. But it's like, I call myself the president of the Garrett Unkelbach fan club because it's like, if I'm not your number one fan, then who is, right? And then, like, we'll clap for Garrett, me and the girls, when he walks in the door because we're just like, we're so excited. You're here. You came home to us. We love you. But it's our job to be the encouragers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so Rian gave you, if anybody's out there struggling, prayer, wise counsel, and actual wise counsel. Notice that her wise counsel knew me, because it's easy to be like, my husband did this, and someone that doesn't know them, like, what a insert whatever insult, and maybe they're right, but if they don't have any like knowledge of the person that you're married to, and they don't necessarily have your best interest in mind, aka they don't share your values. Rian was speaking to women who didn't look at marriage, like exiting marriage, as an option. You had shared values. Can you just share, because God was good, he gave you a word in that time that's 100% come true. Sure. Do you remember that word?
Yeah.
Okay.
So during the time, I'm obviously just asking God, I don't understand this. This is not who I married. Mm-hmm. And I know that this is a season and we will come through this. But God gave me a picture of sand in a hand. And he said, you need to hold him loosely. Trust me, because if you try and hold on to him, just like sand in a hand, it will fall through your fingers. So this is a season where you need to trust that I've got him, and don't try and control anything or make him be someone. He needs to come through that process himself and make the decision himself. So that's what I did.
And that's very much, I think, where people could hear your story and be encouraged. But I think the foundation there for you is faith.
Yeah.
How long was that time that you were just, going on walks and praying for Nick, and it was not a fun time in your marriage? How long was that season?
Well, it progressively got worse or more intense. It was probably over the course of 8 years, would you say?
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that's not a short amount of time.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to highlight that for anybody that's listening. Whether it's specifically in your marriage or another season of your life, you've got to trust in God. And sometimes it's not going to be a short season. You're going to go through years and years of just believing and trusting. And I'm sure that, that developed your own faith too, Rian. And there were times where you probably had more faith and times where you had a little bit of less faith, but continuing to just pray and believe and remind God of what he said. And sometimes that's just stirring up your own faith. But I just wanted to highlight that portion of it. It's not always a short season.
Absolutely. And it's, not to say that I didn't have many moments of just crying and not understanding. The season was challenging, but it helped refine me, and it helped create another book in my catalogue of life of God coming through and God proving himself.
Because there was another word that you got from God about, I'm right now, you're like, I wasn't there, but when I did kind of take off, can you share that one as well?
Sure. So another picture I had was when
God speaks to Rian in pictures. For the record, she saw the sorry to interrupt you, babe. She saw the inside of the auditorium of Elevate Life Church before it was actually built. Like when we were in Bible college and we weren't even together, she saw that. And when we went to Elevate Life Church for the first time, I wasn't serving God, so she didn't share it with me. But you walked in, you were like, "This is the place."
I had goosebumps. I was like, "This is pretty wild."
Yeah.
He'd given it me, and then I had forgotten about it.
Yeah, and so God speaks to Rena in pictures, and we could talk a whole other thing about how God speaks. But yeah, go ahead, babe.
So yeah, when I met Nick, he was running after God, super passionate, wanting to evangelize, all the things, and then he wasn't. So he could never say that there wasn't a God because of creation.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of confusion. So God gave me a picture of Nick running so quickly, and he was wearing like a cape. And
I actually have the cape.
There were tassels at the end of the cape or cloak, and I was running and holding on like I was trying to like keep up with you. And God said, you don't see it now, but when Nick does rediscover who I truly am, he will be running so fast and so hard after me, you will have to hold on to keep up.
Yeah, and I just, like, as we're going through this isn't really how I saw the podcast going, if I'm being honest, but I just want to say to people.
We said it was a roast of Nick.
Yeah,
so.
This is kind of like a real, like, this one hurts roast. Most of the time I'm laughing too. But no, actually this doesn't hurt. And the reason is, I just, like, the story Rian just told, anything that you know, if you've listened to this podcast, if you go back to the beginning, if you've known me personally, you can see a difference. And is this what I want to have as my life story of like, hey, you really were letting down your wife and all these different things? No, I actually hate knowing that I put you through that. So like sharing this is not what I would want to do by choice, but you know what? It's real. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, like literally the whole of my life, if there's anything that you can look at and go, hey, if that guy can do it, I can do it. That's why I'm putting my life out here. That's why we're sharing this, is because all I want to do is just be an encouragement to people to go after God wholeheartedly, and because he's good. And what I'm experiencing in my life, in my marriage, just in my relationship with God is so far beyond anything I could ask, think, or imagine, to use Ephesians 3:20. And so as we share this, like I'm oddly not feeling bad or shameful or embarrassed by what we're sharing. It's not what I would want to have. It's not the way I would write my story, but it's what's happened. And I know that a lot of other people can relate. So like we want to share this, not because I love talking about it, but because I want people to be like, okay, because our relationship, you know, it wasn't like, I always joke with Garrett. Sometimes he thinks I was like this turd that came home, beat the dog, like, you know, got in a fight with the neighbors, drank a 6-pack and yelled at his wife. I'm like, look, bro, I wasn't like, you know, your made for TV special.
12-pack.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. 12-pack. Yeah. So I'm like, we had lots of fun as well, but it was a steady decline, like Rian said. And it was just, you know, I could go into the mindset of depression, and there's all sorts of lessons. I've shared some of those before, but it's so like I said, it's not what I would want, but it's you know, God makes all things work together for good. What's good? It's your maturity. And so like I can safely say, for me, the thought process of going back to anything that I had, aka there is no God, or God's, you know, Christianity is not real, all the different things that I was holding on to, is like the most ridiculous thing in the world. Because I'm like, I know what's down that road. I walked it, and it is so painful and empty. And so when we're sharing these, I don't feel embarrassed because I want it to be encouragement. So I just wanted to say that to people, because things were, you know, we got into it. So and that's the whole point of this. All right. So bringing us back here. So we touched on so much there, and Lindsay, you kind of talked about it in being a crown. And I love that you picked that scripture up about being the crown on Garrett's head. I think that's awesome. But like, so can you go into that a little bit more about what you think the role of a wife is in marriage?
Sure. So I think I've touched on it quite a bit. It's being the servant of your house. You're there to serve your family. You're there to serve your husband. Being the crown is being something that you don't. I think you don't hold your husband back. I don't know if that's the right words for it, but like I never wanted you to hold you back because of something, and then also to be left back too. You know, Garrett pursues God at like the fastest speed possible, right? Like he knows scripture very, very well. He runs really hard. And I didn't want to be over. We've seen couples that have this imbalance where, you know, the husband is so spiritually mature, he pursues God, he does all this, and then the wife is kind of back here, right? And so I always wanted to run along with him. So I'd say being a crown is running by your side. I would also say, I don't know. Like, listen, I'm away from my kids in my kitchen, so that's what I do all day long. I would also say that I set the environment of my household.
Yeah.
That's something else that I think is really important, is creating a peaceful home for our family. And then, you know, like I said, being a cheerleader. I like to
I think you take both both like physically and just like emotionally, you're responsible for health. You know, you like literally you help me take my vitamins, but on a deeper.
Garrett, I'm like, have you drank water today?
Right, but so
but being a crown it's like, okay, like you can jokingly say it's like a biblical trophy wife, but like truly, I don't want to like. I want to be something my husband's proud of. I want to be physically fit. I want to be healthy. I want to take care of my children. Like I want to be the best version of myself. So that's what being like a crown is to me. And then crowning him with like the excellence.
And all those things I would say are, just to, you know, make it extra cheesy, are the jewels on the crown, but really who you are. And this is what I saw in you from the beginning. And I think you've only just grown in this, because in marriage, your role isn't necessarily to change the other person. That's God's job.
Right.
God's the one who can change us.
Yeah, very good.
But it's our job to help our spouse grow. And something I saw in you from the very beginning, you know, that early on you had this, and I was like, man, that'll just be so much greater over time, is just the attitude that you have, having a positive attitude, being a sweet spirit, which you are, you know, that's only just grown. And so I knew it was my job. And I said, so you do this in me, and I'm just reflecting that back to you. You help me become what the greatness I was meant to be. And I feel like I've seen the same thing in you.
Yeah. I remember early on, when Garrett and I were first becoming friends, and I hadn't met you yet. Like the first 3 times I came over here to podcast, I wondered if you had like a dungeon where you kept your wife. 'Cause I didn't even see you. And I was like, where? Like,
sneaky.
I mean, your house is like good size, but it's not like, you know, no offense, y'all don't have a mansion. So I wasn't like, oh, she's in the West Wing. I'm like, where is this woman? And I'm like, hey, so is your wife home? Yeah, she's around. And I never saw you. So I didn't know who you were, but I remember he described you to me, and the first word he used was sweet. And I said to him, like, oh, that's funny. That's the very first word I used to describe Rand. Literally, the first word that comes to mind. She's sweet. So for anybody if you're still single and you're looking for a wife, you know, it's worked out well for us.
Be sweet.
Yeah, be sweet.
If you're a woman, be sweet.
Yeah, okay, so you're obviously the seasoned marriage veteran with almost 2 decades. So what's your role? What do you think the role is of the wife in marriage? Like, what's your, as you see it?
For me personally, as the wife, I am your cheerleader, your encourager. But I'm also your accountability partner. So we are able to be real with each other in a loving way. I know that you want the best for me and I want the best for you. So when we do have conversations, that's always the foundation of, even if I didn't want to hear that, you want the best for me. So for me, I walk in confidence of my femininity, in the sense of what I bring as a female. I don't try and walk in any masculine energy. You've got that covered. You do that excellently. You lead the family. We are a team, but I am happy to follow you because you lead well. And so for me, I am the constant for the children at home. And so just keep all the plates spinning. And I love doing that. It's an honor and it's a privilege. And just being confident to let you run your race that you personally have, but we're running it together.
Yes.
So whenever you have success, that's both of our successes because we are on this race together in life.
Yeah. And that's, man, how well did I marry? I mean, I
10 out of 10.
I mean, like, now I'm glad everybody gets
Got
to see
a good
how well
picker.
Oh my gosh, I got like a 15 out of 10. Something that you've both said, and I really want people to capture this, it is that team thought process means I don't care if you score the touchdown or I score the touchdown, because a touchdown was scored. And what that looks like practically, there's a lot of cool things happening in both of our lives. In the impossible life, just in what God's doing through ministry, in various businesses, there's a lot of really cool things. And I know, like, I'll be like, hey babe, watch this. Like, you know, my company works with Rollins. I'm going to the Gold Glove ceremony again. We get to do the video that everybody gets to watch. And, you know, that for me as a baseball fan is so much fun. And like, who do you think sees the first cut of it? Not Rollins, my wife. Hey babe, come check this out. And we get to just like share those things. Or when those of you who are listening, any message you send to us, I promise you, it means just as much to me now as it did the first day. I still remember the first one we got from Bill Geyer, a guy in Washington who we still keep in contact with and is on Mindset Mastery with us. And every time we get a review or anything, it's very humbling. And these are like, they move me because, as y'all know, we're not doing this because Garrett and I have aspirations of fame or anything. We just want to see God's kingdom advanced in people's lives. So when people are kind enough to send us a message, you know, I'm like, babe, read this. And we sit there and it's just like, or if it's something in what, we're leading our kids ministry together, which is such a joy, and getting to see the impact and for me, watching you grow in that, in your leadership and who God made you to be. And I think you have so much of what so many women could benefit from. I just think you're an amazing template for any woman out there. And I just love seeing you grow in that. And so like when we're sharing, we're winning this, like I hope y'all are capturing the team thought process, because we both have that. And that's something that I got to give you credit. You were the one that really defined that for us when we got married. You said, hey, I always want us to be a team. And I was like, yeah, me too. I didn't have it that clearly defined, but I was like, yes, I'm on board. And we said that from day one. I didn't necessarily hold up my end of that bargain all the time, but I'm not making up for it, but I'd like to think that I'm going to give you more than you ever even dreamed of for the rest of our lives, which is fun.
Absolutely.
But I think it comes from a deep trust in each other. We all want the best for each other. And so, Garrett will show me things before they hit social media. And it's, I have an eye that I'm like, oh, nah, it's not really what you're trying to do. Because it's just, I want the best for Garrett, and I know that he trusts my opinion. And Garrett, Pastor Keith says it, your wife's voice is second to God. Yeah. So I take that seriously whenever I'm giving him advice, if I'm going to, take that place, just because my voice carries weight. Mm-hmm. And so I always want to be sure that, I'm listening to God so that I'm saying the right things.
Yeah. Now, so we've talked about being, how you guys are cheerleaders, and I can say there's so many ways that Rian loves me well, but just to put some practicals on that, what are some ways that we love you well? Like, Rhea, if you want to give an example of me, how I love you, because it's not this is not like a one-way thing where we're just like, well, I conquered another mountain today, my love. Where's dinner? You know what I mean? It's a two-way. If we weren't putting in, Rian used to have a saying, you don't have to say it anymore, but when we read the 5 love languages, you'd say, hey, my love tank's empty because you were quality time. And I used to find that annoying in my low points, whereas now, I'm just being real. I did, but now I understand that. And it's so I'm proactive about being man, I cannot allow that to happen. We need to have quality time to connect. But so, yeah, what's one way that I love you well?
So that's one way, good lead-in, is I'm British. I love to walk. Oof. It's in my blood. And so when Nick has had more business trips, he's traveling and he's been away, he will be proactive and say, hey, let's go for a walk, because he knows that fills my tank, and just getting that quality time. It only has to be 10 minutes here and there, but it means a lot to me. Another thing is you are a person of your word. And so when you say something, I know that you are going to follow through, and that brings security. So that's really loving me well. And you say what's important to you is important to me. So even if you don't want to do certain activities or take all the photos or all the things, when you know it's important to me, you do it. And not begrudgingly, you do it from a place of honor.
Yeah, and I always say to her, I was I will do it, and I will have an excellent attitude. No, I will, because there's
it's
no
okay.
sense.
Garrett will listen to me rant about how horrible I think Russell Crowe is in Les Miserables, so I'm I get it.
Wow, you got it way worse, G. That sounds awful. I'm just kidding. All right,
I've heard it many times.
Yeah, that Russell Crowe. Anyways,
listen, we don't have to get on it right now, but
Well, for example, to show your growth, there was a time in our marriage where if you didn't want to do something, you wouldn't do it, because you were just looking at your own needs and you weren't thinking about
that's called
how to love
folks.
me well. So we actually
mic real quick.
we went to, not live, but we went to see the Phantom of the Opera at the cinema.
Awful.
Nick literally walked out and went to the bar and
how
sat
could you?
and left me to watch it by myself.
Wow.
If you're going to be left to watch a movie, that's a great movie.
Yeah. It was live from London.
Yeah. I hate musicals, and when they were singing every line, I was like, this is the worst thing I could ever imagine. But it was weak, honestly. It was super weak. And that's where it's...
But now when you come home and you've had an intensive video shoot or whatever with work, and you've had 4 hours of sleep, you come home and you have already made a non-decision in your mind that you're going to still turn up for the family. You're going to play with the kids. You're going to still be present. And so that's how you love me well. You don't give us your leftovers.
Man, this is the greatest day ever. Because to have your wife say when you do something, you're going to do it. And your wife says it. Because I can't fake that. I'm around, I work from home. If I'm telling Rena, oh yeah, whatever, and I don't do it, you're not going to come on here and like just say it to make me look good, right?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, but I mean, like for me, that's important, and there's so much of what I first saw that in Garrett when I sat down to get coaching with him, and he's like, I would rather die than break my word. And I've looked at a lot of people who've said a lot of tough stuff, and then I've watched them not back it up.
He means it.
And the Riff was just looking at me. Riff stands for Resting Intensity Face. He was just staring. I can still see it in my mind. We were at Ascension Coffee in Frisco, Texas, at the Star, and he said it to me, and I was like, I actually believe this guy, and I don't understand why he feels so much on that. But he's like, my wife will ask me why this is so important, and he was like, went into detail about it. I still remember it because so much of like that I observed from him. The Decide was something I observed from your dad. That's why I'm so grateful for your family, because your family has been such a huge blessing of, I say we've been adopted into the Uncle Box, and I'm so grateful for that, because there's so much of what I've learned from watching y'all that has spilled into our relationship. And that's why I say I don't mind sharing whatever makes me look bad. I don't care, because I don't feel like anything that is good is of my own doing anyways. God's like plucked me out. So I just want to shout out the Uncle Box. Sprinks, same question. How does Garrett love you well?
Well, Garrett is very romantic, so I know that might surprise
Oh,
you.
my.
I know. Wow. Shocking. He was on The Impossible Life.
I love how he's not even looking at you.
He's like, please, no.
He's like, I've got a reputation, woman.
No, Garrett is so intentional, and especially, again, quality time is something that means a lot to me, too. So we do daily press conferences in the sauna, because I have a million words, and I'm like, when I'm around children...
Lots of questions.
Lots of questions. And so when I've been around little kids all day, I'm ready to just word vomit all over Garrett. So he understands that and has taken it upon himself to do 20 minutes quality time every day. We sit in the sauna uninterrupted, no phones. It's just like we're face to face talking. And then, so daily press conferences, weekly date nights. So Thursday night, we're always out on a date. We see that a lot in people that we know that are married. They have kids and then they just stop dating. We've always been intentional to date.
Yeah.
Or even they're like, oh yeah, date night's important, but when's the last time we went on a date night? 3 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago.
It's like you're not married to your kids. You're married to each other. You love each other.
We make it a priority. We don't skip it. I mean, the rare times I don't travel on Thursdays very often. Part of the reason we pick Thursdays, but we have a babysitter that it's like, hey, Thursday night. We were paying you every Thursday night.
Yep.
And so it's not like a demand. We just found somebody that works for them, so that we're not. I think a lot of people don't get on date nights just because they treat it as a matter of convenience, and we treat 100%. It as a matter of priority.
Totally.
Yeah,
and there's times where our date will just be like, we're just hanging out in the car, talking to each other, go grab food. That's it. Like it doesn't need to be crazy fancy, just need to be together. And then quarterly overnights, and then annual trips. So, and Garrett has always kept his word. I think that seems to be something that you guys all have in common.
Yeah.
So because you keep your word to me, I trust you, and I'm okay with how busy you are, because I know that we have our time together. You have your time with the children, and you love me very well.
I love
You also
that.
celebrate me once a month, like Pastor Keith does. Successes and templates, and he celebrates Pastor Sheila every month, just like Garrett celebrates me.
Let's just gong it up for PK.
Let's just shout out to the sensei,
dude. What a model. But so and like if you can find Pastor Keith's messages on Elevate Life's YouTube channel if you want to hear him talk about marriage, because it'd be so foolish of us to all sit here and not credit the template that we've got to see on top of our own parents and things that we've learned. But
so I will say one more thing
Pastor Keith. Yeah.
about how Garrett loves me well. Garrett also has this thing where he knows what I'll like before I like it. It's he just has
it's called
this
Inception.
But like two of my favorite things in the world are cooking and running.
Oh.
And so Garrett, he's like, I think you'd really like running. Like it seems like something you'd be really into. So first you would say, okay, let's go on runs together. So he'd do it with me, and then it would inspire me to love it. And I think because you take such care in knowing me so well, that you help me to develop my best skills. With cooking, we would always, Garrett was a better cook before we got married. And
not anymore.
Not anymore. Well, I probably put in 10,000 hours in the kitchen, so.
Yeah. We're all grateful for it. I always say all my favorite cookies are made by Lindsay.
I got a homemade chicken pot pie today.
We're coming up to Christmas. We're coming up to Christmas time. Oh man, I'm gonna lose weight. I'm not even joking. In advance, that's not a joke.
You're ready for Thanksgiving.
I'm already starting to trim down.
You're gonna pre-lose the weight you're gonna gain.
100%.
I like that.
If it's between saying no to her cookies or I'm give me the cookies, man. This is the most wonderful time of the year. It's amazing. Anyways, so a side note there. Okay, so let's get we got into some tactical things. I want to get into some additional tactical, which is conflict resolution, because as much as Rena and I have shared some of our conflict that in our relationship. I actually got to witness a little conflict resolution between the two of you, which for me, I was really interesting because I've been around y'all a lot. We love going out together. We're all best friends. It's just fun, right? Like what a blessing. And so I remember I was up here. I'm just going to describe it. I'm going to kick it over to y'all because I want people to see this. Because for me, this was a real, like I said, we could come on here and be like, our marriages are great. But like we see what happens, right? We see what happens in each other's lives. You know what's going on in your own life. And so I was up here in the podcast studio and your sister's wedding was coming up. Big day. And Garrett's the leader of our men's ministry, and he's committed to always be there. And I mean always, at a level that I don't think other men in our ministry or other men out there would think is reasonable. Why? Because you gave your word. So
it's lead from the front. If I want guys to have high attendance and I don't, it's not going to work very well. So I should have the highest attendance record. I mean, I miss maybe 4 or 5 Saturdays a year.
There you go. And so I'm sat here preparing for the podcast, and I hear something outside, like you guys are talking. And
squabble.
It wasn't like a squabble where I was like, you're yelling, but I was like,
intense conversation.
I was like, something's not right. And I just heard Lindsay go like, what? Why can't they move it? Like, and he was like, I can't remember what you said, but you're like, I'm gonna be there. And so you came in. I'm like, and I witnessed this. Well, kick it over to y'all because I was like, what's going on?
Go ahead, babe.
Yeah.
Well, so Warrior Weekend is for those that don't know, is one of the biggest men's events that they have at the church every year. And that so happened to fall in the same weekend as my sister's wedding. So
It got moved
to that date, which whatever it was, it got moved. And the date was the date. It was out of our control. So the event was that Friday, and my sister's wedding was Saturday. She was getting married in California, in San Diego. And also the event, it goes Friday to Saturday, right?
Friday to Saturday
so it's a Warrior Weekend, right?
And y'all had planned to fly out Thursday.
We had planned to fly out Thursday because I'm the maid of honor. It's my sister, my daughter's flower girl. It's like we got all hands on deck, families in. So when we found the dates change, I mean, I immediately cried because I already knew the decision that was going to be made just because as a family, we already know what our mission is and that I know that Garrett's going to be there. He's going to be at Warrior Weekend somehow. So how can this work that you can still be present at the wedding? So what the squabble was figuring out how that would work exactly. And I flew out. You flew out with us Thursday.
I flew out Thursday.
Yeah.
And then I flew back.
And at the time we had a 2-year-old. Oh, no. She was 2. Yeah.
Yep.
She was 2 and we had a baby. So these like little kids coming with us.
We flew out Thursday. I flew back to Texas Friday morning.
Yep.
For the event, and then Saturday morning, right after the event, I flew back to California and got there just in time. It all worked.
It all worked out.
But so like, G, in your mind, you were just like, I just got to figure this out.
So you're talking about conflict resolution. To me, I put a lot of things in the context of battlefield and combat. You win conflict resolution not by what you do in the moment, but the preparation for the moment. You win combat not by being courageous in a moment, but by all the preparation that's happened coming into that moment. And so some of the stuff that Lindsay was saying, she trusts me. I'm a man of my word. When I tell her, hey, it's going to be okay, I'm going to make it. But we're going to win in both of these things. I'm going to be at that event. I'm going to be at the wedding, and it's not going to. No one's going to be mad. I won't miss anything important. I can do both of those. I love you. I'm going to put you first because I've proven that to her prior.
Right.
Where conflict resolution is able to happen instead of me either us having a blow up or me having to just relent and give up on commitments because that's what's going to appease my wife. It's all the preparation coming into the conflict resolution that makes conflict resolution go well.
Yeah, very well said. And speaking of conflict resolution, and one of the joys, I talked earlier about how the Unkelbach family has been such just a catalyst for growth.
This is one of I know where you're going with this, and I'll let you go there. I'll just say this is one of my favorite moments because I know why you like it. I like it for a different reason because I was going to say what Lindsay said, but I've seen Lindsay grow just in like her assertiveness. And
Garrett helped me like find my voice box, and then now it's like he's like okay, that's
when we first
just push that voice back.
When we first got married, I'm strong and assertive.
No.
And when we first got married, Lindsay wasn't. And I had to like...
I was so compliant as a kid, because I'm middle kid, right? Yeah. Like I was so compliant as a kid. My kindergarten teacher, my mom can confirm this story. My kindergarten teacher like approached my mom and was like, she just gives like everything away. Like we were a little worried about her. Like everybody just kind of steamrolls over her. So I think like everybody was worried about me.
But I didn't want, so I like tried to help her develop. I'm like, hey, you can push back on me. Like, what's your opinion in this? And I helped her develop.
He's like, do you have an opinion? No. Like when we first got married, I would like not have an
but
opinion
now
on
she,
anything.
now she has a lot of opinions, and she's very
I have
assertive.
too many.
And so I'll let you finish getting there, but I'll just say I loved this moment because I was going to say that, but then I realized like I'm not going to have to say it. She'll say it.
Well, and I actually say I got to tell people what happened because we all know. Okay, so we're out to dinner, eating steak, shocker, and
bottomless steak.
Oh man, we ate a lot of meat that night. But so we're sat there, and Rian goes every year. Well, like I said to Rian, if it's important to you, it's important to me. That's been something I've developed in the past few years. And at this point, I was like, okay, I didn't like not being able to come home because we couldn't afford it when we were in the UK. I couldn't come home every year. It was like an every other year thing. And so I was like, okay, well, you're apart from your family. So every year we send back Rian and the kids. And because I was self-employed, I was incredibly busy. And, it's not cheap to fly internationally for what is now a family of 5. I had lots of good reasons. And also, I just didn't enjoy living in the UK. And there was zero part of me that wanted to go back to a place that I didn't enjoy and had a lot of bad memories and just go revisit them all. So I had been sending you back for years. And my wife's a superstar. She's very capable. She can fly with 3 kids on an international flight. So, hopefully that's a new level set of possible for people out there.
That's a mom flex.
Yeah. Dude, my wife's the best mom I've ever seen. She's ridiculous. It's insane how good of a mom you are. So anyways, I'm sharing, like, we're talking about this because Lindsay is like the ultimate quiz show interviewer. Like, you sit down, you're like, hey, so what's...
If we're going to be on a date and it's going to be somebody who like isn't talking, well, you guys are very talkative and you're all of our friends, but if I'm ever, it's the Lindsay Unpack talk show.
Yeah.
Like, it just, you have now entered the talk show, and I will ask you a laundry list of questions.
You warm them up, and then Garrett's like, okay, let's talk about the deep, and so you were asking questions, and Rian was saying, like, you're like, hey, so what's coming up this summer? And like, Rian was telling about the trip, and so it comes out during this that I'm not planning on going back. And Lindsay then shares...
I asked an innocent question. Well, how come you're not going?
Yeah. Yeah, and I said, I gave you the answer why, and I didn't know it was coming. I was hoping that some more filet mignon was coming, but what was actually coming was...
I'll just say...
With some burnt meat.
Lindsay and I had both talked about and agreed, right? Like, we do stuff with my family, with her family. We do all these things together. It's not like, hey... You go to
your family, I'll go to
your
mine.
family stuff, and I'll go do my family stuff. No, we are the family, and those are our extended family, and we're going to do extended family stuff as a family.
Yeah,
we'd had a lot of those conversations, so I knew when you started saying like, oh, I let Rian go back with her kids, I was like,
I'm like, so you're just not going to go?
So what Lindsay said, she's like, and it was actually better that it came from you than from Garrett, because Garrett's he's hammered me a lot on and continues to. But like you truly have like the little sister space in my heart, and so you like poke at me and then you feed me cookies, and then we'll be like, hey, and now we're gonna go have fun. Like it's like it's all the roles of little sister, right? Like I'm surprised you haven't kicked me in the shins, and that'll probably happen. So you were like, you just looked at me and you're like, I think that's lame. Well, you didn't look at me. You looked at me and then you looked away.
I said it and then I looked down.
No, you didn't. You didn't look me in the eye and say like, I think that's lame. Like you should go. Like every time I go somewhere, even if Garrett just flies out with me and then comes back and gets us because of whatever, like he still goes. And like you wouldn't look at me, but you were very clear about what you were saying. And I remember like I was listening to you and I was so amused because I could tell how much you hated conflict because you wouldn't look me in the eye, which is very unlike you. But at the same time, what you were saying, I was like, oh. And I remember we left that and I was like, well, I guess I'm going to England now. And honestly, the reason we're sharing this, you need to have other people in your life. Like you just like you hear what Rian said about seeking wise counsel in her moments. We weren't in a bad place. Like Rian was, it's not like we were struggling at that time. Our marriage was just continuing to get better. But like, there's still blind spots. There's things that I had, it's not like you get out of the place of being a turd overnight. There's some things that changed overnight for me personally. There's a lot of things like your thinking has to change. And this was one of those moments of like, hey, here's your thinking change opportunity. And so it was just a real, I'm highlighting that for people out there. Like, don't try and just be like, hey, us two and we're good. Like God has designed it for you to have other people to run with, what we call family of choice, to elevate life. And it's so important because, it's a blessing now. And you know what? Because I'm going to go and I'm not going to, like I say, if it's important to you, it's important to me. And I'm not just going to show up and mail it in. So I have a good attitude. And every year we go, it keeps getting better. Go ahead and say what you want to say, Lindsay. 'Cause I can just, she's over there smiling, and I know you can't resist it. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say there's a follow-up to the next year. Mm-hmm. Nick so happened to forget to renew his passport. So
yeah. And now that's out there forever. It was
everybody
a genuine
knows
mistake.
that now.
We both gave Nick plenty of hard time about his willful negligence.
It was not.
I was like,
I forgot my
your
passport expired.
just happened to not.
They're absolutely roasting me. They're like, I felt awful. I remember looking at you because I never want to let you down.
Felt awful sitting at home in the United States.
Grown-ups are talking. So I felt awful because I had to go to my wife and tell her I let her down. If there's one thing I don't want to do in my life at this point, I don't want to let my wife down. So I remember looking at you and I was like, literally had tears coming to my eyes because I felt so terrible. I called my government officials, both nationally and locally. I literally learned more about the passport process. Thanks a lot, COVID, and could not get that. So I did try, but yeah, it was a total turd move. I just did not check my passport. So,
we said, this is the roast.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's.
I want people to take that as a point of encouragement, though, because people see you now, and people will look at someone and think, oh, they've just got it all together, or look how mature or confident, or insert whatever word. But you are continuing to grow as we all are and getting better. But it was only a couple of years before COVID that you were like, I'm not going because I don't want to. Yeah. So, but now you choose to, and
I'm going to go and make it the best trip of our life. And we
ladies, your husbands can get it.
Yeah.
They can.
And husbands, your wives can get it. Because, like I said, it's not just one way. All right, so I want to head towards the finish line here with just two things. Ladies, what are like the absolute musts of marriage? We've talked about dates. We've talked about, a bunch of different things. Is there anything that you feel like we haven't said that you would say, look, these are things that, if you could say to somebody, just do these things, these are the musts of marriage, what would those be?
I would say that people put like their husbands before God sometimes. Like it's the triangle, right? Of like, be your best for God, he'll be his best for God, and you'll meet each other at the top, like Pastor Keith always explains. And I think people don't necessarily do it that way. They're out of order. So I would say the must in marriage is to keep your marriage in order.
Very good. What about you, Ben?
I'd agree with Lindsay. Keep God at the forefront and center. Don't try and bring two halves together. Be your best. Work at being your best. Work on continuing to keep communication open. Never assume you know what your husband's thinking. And always make time for one another to have fun and just have that connection, because we've had seasons where we haven't been connected, and it's a lot more fun when you are.
Yeah, very good. All right, ladies, very last one, and then we'll wrap. What's your favorite thing about being married? Because, why not finish on a high?
Oh, my favorite thing. Well, Garrett's my best friend, and he's just fun. Like, I know that might, again, romantic, fun. Like, Who am I talking about? I'm actually talking about my husband, and now it's amazing.
Well, Lindsay gets to see a side of me that most people don't see and will never see, and that's okay.
Yes.
And you will not see unless I sneak up behind you and show you.
Well, he has to have a good sense of humor. He's married to me. Like, listen, so I would just say that, it's fun just to build life together, and it's, it just gets more full and exciting as time goes on, and the more children we add, and it's just, it's just great.
All right, Rebo.
So the first thing that came to my mind was falling asleep every night next to my best friend.
Oh,
so just having shared goals and just going through life together with purpose and passion, and just sharing the small moments and the big moments. And you just think we were together when we were early 20s, and the best is yet to come.